In 2022, the average South Korean worker put in 1,901 hours on the job over the course of a single year. That is roughly 270 hours more than the average German worker, the equivalent of nearly 7 extra full-time weeks. South Korea is the 4th highest in the OECD for annual hours worked, sitting behind only Mexico, Costa Rica, and Chile. For a country that ranks among the world's most educated and most technologically advanced economies, that number feels like a contradiction. So what explains it? And is it finally starting to change? According to the OECD, South Korean workers averaged 1,901 hours in 2022, compared to 1,341 in Germany and 1,634 in Japan. Korea's own figure has actually been falling. It was above 2,300 hours as recently as the early 2000s. Yet the gap with other wealthy nations remains stubbornly wide. A Statistics Korea survey found that roughly 1 in 4 Korean wage workers regularly exceeded 52 hours per week, even after the 52-hour cap was legislated in 2018. The proportion of workers putting in very long hours, meaning over 50 per week, is still among the highest in the OECD. And the Korea Labor Institute has documented that unpaid overtime, known locally as service work, remains widespread and largely invisible in official statistics. South Korea's long hours culture did not emerge by accident, it was engineered. After the Korean War, the government and large conglomerates known as chaebol forged an unspoken contract: loyalty and endurance in exchange for job security and national prosperity. Working visibly long hours became a signal of commitment, not just effort. Confucian ideas about hierarchy reinforced this. Leaving before a senior colleague was, and in many workplaces still is, considered disrespectful. The education system compounded it. Students who survived punishing school hours and university entrance exams arrived in offices already conditioned to equate duration with worth. Economists at the Korea Development Institute have noted that Korean firms historically rewarded hours-based presence over output-based performance, making face time at the office a rational career strategy even when the extra hours produced little measurable work. The result was a culture where busyness became a form of social currency. The toll has been severe and well documented. The Korean Medical Association and public health researchers have linked chronic overwork to elevated rates of cardiovascular disease and depression among working-age adults. South Korea's suicide rate remains one of the highest in the OECD, and occupational stress is consistently cited as a contributing factor in national health surveys. The country even has a word for death by overwork, gworosa, which has entered legal and medical vocabulary. Productivity tells a different story too. The OECD found that South Korea produces less GDP per hour worked than most other high-income members, suggesting that long hours are substituting for, rather than driving, efficiency. And crucially, young Koreans are voting with their feet. A growing movement called the MZ Generation Pushback, tracked by multiple Korean news outlets and the Korea Labor Institute, has seen younger workers openly reject overtime culture, contributing to firms struggling to retain talent. South Korea's long hours story is not simply a Korean story, it is a compressed version of a transition that every industrializing economy eventually faces. The moment when the strategy that built prosperity begins to corrode the society it was meant to serve. Germany took decades to reduce its working hours through collective bargaining and cultural change. Japan is still fighting the same battle under the banner of its own work reform laws. What makes South Korea distinct is the speed of the feedback loop. A generation that grew up watching their parents sacrifice health for security is now openly refusing the same deal, and doing so loudly enough that policymakers and corporations are being forced to respond. The universal pattern here is simple. When the cost of a work culture becomes visible in hospital wards and empty cradles, the culture eventually bends. The only question is how long it takes.